The Galactic Academy of Strategic Intelligence stood like a mountain of glass and steel on the surface of Varith. Prime, for 300 years the Academy had trained the finest minds in the known galaxy, species from 12 civilizations. Sent their brightest children here, they came to learn the art of seeing danger. Before it arrived, they came to become the eyes and ears of the galactic. Conquered, today was the day that mattered most, the threat identification exam. 200 candidates sat in a vast amphitheater. The seats rose and curved, rose from a central stage where the examiners watched. The ceiling was transparent, showing the purple sky of Varith Prime and its 3 distant suns. But nobody looked up. Every eye in the room was fixed on the other candidates. Commander Vex Tourish of the Cathari species sat in row 9. He had 4 arms, each one ending in clawed fingers. His skin was the color of dried blood, and his eyes could see heat signatures that other species could not detect. He had spent 15 years in military intelligence. He had caught spies on 6 different worlds. He was certain he would pass this exam. He scanned the room slowly. His training told him to look for nervousness. Guilty people showed signs. Rapid breathing, elevate body heat, small movements that betrayed internal stress. He had already identified 3 probable threats in the first 10 minutes. In row 7, a Dravathi candidate was sweating. The insectoid creature kept clicking its mandibles in a pattern that suggested extreme anxiety. Its compound eyes darted left and right without stopping. Vex made a note on his data pad. Threat 1. In row 12, a Vorax sat alone. Massive reptilian creature had scars across its face and arms. Vorax were known as soldiers, not analysts. What was a warrior doing in an intelligence exam? The creature kept flexing its claws as if preparing for combat. Vex made another note. Threat 2. In row 1. Near the front, a human male kept glancing around the room. He was young, perhaps 25 years old by human counting. His leg bounced up and down in a constant rhythm. His hands gripped his data pad so tightly that his knuckles had turned white. Vex smiled to himself. Threat 3. This exam would be easy. Across the amphitheater, analyst Yenith of the Salori species was taking a different approach. The Salori were telepathic. They could not read specific thoughts, but they could sense emotions like humans could smell flowers. Yenith sat with her eyes closed, her silver skin glowing faintly. As she reached out with her mind, the room was a storm of feelings. Fear dominated. Almost every candidate was afraid of failure, but Yenith was searching for something different. She was looking for the cold emptiness that trained operatives learned to project. Spy would feel like a hole in the emotional landscape. She found the nervous Dravathi immediately. That one was broadcasting terror so loudly that it was almost painful to sense. Not a threat, just scared. She found the Vorax warrior. His emotions were simple and clear: boredom, irritation, confidence. He was not hiding anything. She found the fidgeting human in row 1. His fear was genuine and overwhelming. He was terrified of failing, nothing more. Yenith frowned. Where were the real threats? She kept searching. In row 3, almost exactly in the center of the amphitheater, a human woman sat perfectly still. She had dark hair pulled back from her face. Her skin was brown. Her eyes were dark and her expression was calm. She held no data pad. She had written no notes. She simply sat and watched the room with quiet attention. Yenneith brushed against her emotions and found something. Strange, peace, patience, mild curiosity. It was the emotional signature of someone watching birds in a garden, not someone taking the most important exam of their life. Odd, but not threatening. Yenneith moved on. The central stage, Examiner Seleth watched the proceedings with ancient eyes. He was a primer, one of the oldest species in the galaxy. His body was thin and gray, his face was long, and his movements were slow and deliberate. He had administered this exam for 60 years. He had seen thousands of candidates succeed and fail. Something felt different today. He could not explain it. The three planted threats were in position. The nervous clear's throat. Dravathi was actually a junior analyst, playing a role. The scarred Vorthax was a decorated veteran who had volunteered to be a Dako. The fidgeting human in row 1 was an actor hired specifically for this exam. All three were false threats designed to test whether candidates could see past obvious signs. The real threats were hidden better. An elderly salary woman in row 15 who appeared to be sleeping, a young Cathari student in row 4 who was pretending to be bored, a maintenance drone in the corner that was marked as broken but was actually recording everything. These were the correct answers. Candidates who looked past the obvious would find them. Candidates who only saw surface level indicators would fail. Simple enough. But Kath's eyes kept drifting to row 3, to the human woman who sat so, who watched so carefully, who had not written a single note. He knew her file. Maro Singh, 34 years old, born on Earth in a region called Northern India. Her background was unusual for the academy. She had no military service, no intelligence training. Before applying to the academy, she had been a school teacher. She taught children how to read and write. Her entrance scores had been exceptional, not the highest in her class, but something about her answers had caught the attention of the admissions board. When asked how she would identify a spy in a crowded room, she had written a single sentence: I would watch who was trying hardest not to be watched. The board had debated her admission for 3 days. Some thought she was too old, some thought her lack of training was a weakness, but something about that answer had convinced them to give her a chance. Now she sat in row 3 doing exactly what she had described. Watching Kath felt an unfamiliar sensation. After 60 years of certainty, he felt doubt. The first star passed. Candidates wrote furiously on their data pads. They compared observations. They made calculations. They used every technique they had learned over years of training. A loud noise rang through the amphitheater. Panel in the ceiling had come loose and clattered against the floor. Every head in the room turned toward the sound. Almost every head. Maro Singh in row 3 did not look up. Instead, her eyes moved across the candidates who had not flinched. She counted them silently. 4, no 5, the elderly Solari, the young Cathari, and 3 others who had no reason to be so calm. She made no notes. She simply remembered. The second hour began. Candidates were showing signs of stress now. The Dravathi in row 7 had stopped sweating and started shaking. The Vorax in row 12 had fallen asleep. The human in row 1 had given up, bouncing his leg, and now sat frozen with fear. Yenneith the telepath was growing frustrated. She had found no one who felt like a trained operative either. The threats were better hidden than she Expected, or she was looking for the wrong thing entirely, vexed the Cathari. Commander was growing confident. He had identified not only the three obvious threats but also for more candidates who seemed suspicious. He was certain he would score highest in the class. Marrow Singh sat in row 3 and watched. She had been a teacher for 12 years. She had taught hundreds of children. In a classroom of 30 students, she had learned to see everything: who was struggling, who was pretending to understand, who was being bullied, who was hiding pain behind a smile. Children were not good at hiding things, but they thought they were, and watching them had taught Marrow something important. The truth was never in what people showed. It was in what they tried to hide. She watched the room the way she had once watched her classroom. She saw the nervous Dravathi and understood immediately that the fear was real but harmless. She saw the scarred vortex and recognized the relaxed posture of someone who knew they were safe. She saw the fidgeting human in row 1 and felt sympathy for his obvious terror. None of them were threats. She saw the elderly Salori, who was pretending to sleep but whose eyes opened for half a second. Every few minutes she saw the young Cathari, whose bored expression never changed even when the ceiling panel fell. She saw the maintenance drone in the corner that had a power light still blinking despite being marked as broken. These were the planned threats, the ones the examiners expected candidates to find, but Marrow had also found the others. In row 15, a Cathari male sat with perfect stillness. He breathed as slowly, too evenly, the way someone breathed when they had trained themselves not to react. When the ceiling panel fell, he had not flinched. He had not even blinked. His clothes were wrong too. The fabric had a slight sheen that did not match clothing from his claimed home world. A small thing, easy to miss, but Marrow had noticed. She did not know who he was, but she knew what he was: a real threat not planted by the examiners, something else entirely. The exam timer showed 15 minutes remaining. Marrow Singh finally picked up her data pad and began to write. She wrote for 14 minutes without stopping. She did not list 3 threats or 7 threats. She listed 17, 3 planted by the examiners, 14 that were actually dangerous. She wrote their locations, their behaviors, their probable origins, their likely intentions. When she finished, she set down her data pad and folded her hands in her lap. The timer reached 0. Tone sounded across the amphitheater. T. The amphitheater fell silent as examiner Seleth stood frozen on the stage. His aide whispered urgently in his ear, but the ancient primer seemed unable to respond. In 60 years of administering this exam, he had never seen anything like this. The candidates shifted nervously in their seats. They did not know what was happening. They only knew that something had gone wrong. Finally, Kath raised his hand and spoke in a voice that was not quite steady. Revelation of threats will be delayed. Please remain in your seats. Security teams will begin moving through the amphitheater. Do not be alarmed. Cooperate fully with their instructions. Confusion spread through the room like fire. Candidates looked at each other with wide eyes. This had never happened before. The exam was supposed to end with the dramatic reveal of the planted threats. Successful candidates would celebrate. Failed candidates would leave in shame. That was how it always worked. But armed security officers were now entering from every door. They moved quickly and quietly taking positions. Around the amphitheater, their weapons were not drawn, but their hands rested on their holsters. Sin in row 15, the Cathari male with the two perfect breathing noticed the security teams. Immediately, his eyes flicked to the exits, all blocked. He calculated distances and odds in his mind. The math was not good. He had been embedded at the academy for 2 years. His cover was perfect. His background story had survived 7 different verification checks. He had passed psychological evaluations that were designed to catch exactly what he was. No one had suspected him. Until today. He did not know how it had happened, but he knew he was finished. A security team approached row 15. The officer in front carried a data pad with a photograph on it. The photograph was the Cathari's face. Sir, please come with us. Quietly. The Cathari considered fighting. He had been trained for combat. He could kill at least 3 of them before they brought him down. But what would be the point? His mission was over. His network was probably compromised. Fighting would only make things worse. He stood up calmly and let them place restraints on his forearms. As they led him away, he looked across the amphitheater, searching for what had betrayed him. His eyes found the human woman in row 3. She was watching him with quiet curiosity. Nothing more, no triumph, no satisfaction, just observation. She was the one. He did not know how, but he was certain. Somehow a human school teacher had done with 7 years of conquered counterintelligence had failed to do. The security teams made to more quiet arrests. A salary diplomat who had been passing information to enemy states, a Vorax technician who had been sabotaging academy systems. Both had been operating for years without detection. Both had been identified on the human woman's exam paper. When the arrests were complete, examiner Seleth finally addressed the candidates. Thank you for your patience. The exam will now conclude as planned. He pressed a button on his control panel. The 3 planted threats stood up as programmed. The elderly Salori librarian in row 15. The young Cathari student in row 4. The maintenance drone in the corner that suddenly came to life. A groan went through the amphitheater. Most candidates had missed all 3. They had identified the nervous Dravathi, the scarred Vorthax, and the fidgeting human. They had fallen for every obvious misdirection. 87% of the class had failed, but the failure rate was not what anyone was thinking about. They were thinking about the arrests they had just witnessed. Real threats, not actors or volunteers. Actual enemies who had been hiding among them for years, and someone had found them. The whispers started immediately. Who had done it? How had they known? The candidates looked at each other with new suspicion. If 3 real threats had been hiding in the academy, how many more might still be present? Examiner Seleth raised his hand for silence. Before we conclude, there is one candidate whose performance requires special recognition. He looked directly at row 3. Cadet Maro Singh. Please stand. The human woman rose slowly from her seat. She was shorter than most other species in the room. She looked ordinary, unremarkable, the kind of person who could walk through a crowd without anyone noticing. Every eye in the amphitheater fixed on her. Cadet Singh did not identify the 3 planted threats. Sith announced she identified them correctly. Yes, but she also identified 14 additional threats that were not part of this exam. 3 of those threats were genuine infiltrators, who have now been arrested. Remaining 11 were security vulnerabilities in this room that we were not aware of. Silence complete in total silence. Her exam paper has been forwarded to Concord High Command. I am told that intelligence teams across 12 civilizations are now reviewing her analysis. Sith paused, his ancient eyes studied Marrow with something that might have been wonder or fear. Cadet Singh, how did you do this? Marl thought about the question for a moment, then she spoke in a quiet voice that somehow carried through the entire amphitheater. I watched. Everyone was watching. Selith said that was the point of the exam. No. Marrow said gently, they were looking for what they expected to find. I was watching for what was actually there. She turned slightly to address the room. The nervous Dravathi was afraid, but his fear was about this exam, about failing. It clears throat. Was the fear of a student, not a spy. Spy would have hidden that fear better. The scarred Vorthax was bored and irritated. Those are honest emotions. Spy would have pretended to be nervous. Like everyone else, he would have tried to blend in. The Vorax was not trying to blend in. He did not care. The human in Row 1 was terrified, but his terror was about you. She pointed to the examiners. He was afraid of judgment, of disappointing his instructors. A spy would have been afraid of being caught. Those are different fears. They show in different ways. Vex the Cathari commander leaned forward in his seat. He had seen heat signatures. He had measured breathing rates and pulse patterns, but he had not thought about what those signs actually meant. The ones you missed, he said. How did you find them? The same way Marrow replied. They were wrong, not obviously wrong, subtly wrong. The Cathari in Row 15 breathed to evenly, too controlled. That is not natural breathing. That is trained breathing, breathing that someone practices for years until it becomes automatic. His clothes were also wrong. The fabric had a chemical coating that is used on his claimed home world, but the pattern of wear was inconsistent with the climate there. He said he grew up in a desert region, but his clothes had been treated for humid environments. Small details, easy to miss, but they did not add up. Yenneith, the telepath, closed her eyes. She had searched for the cold emptiness of a trained operative, but the Cathari had not been cold. He had been projecting calm and mild interest. He had been so good at maintaining his cover that even his emotions were false. I am telepathic, Yenneith said. I sense nothing wrong. From him, you sense what he wanted you to sense, Marrow said without judgment. He had trained for telepathic examination. He knew how to project emotions that were not real, but he could not control everything. When the ceiling panel fell, he did not react. Everyone reacts to sudden loud noises. It is automatic, but he had trained himself out of automatic reactions. That training is what he could not hide. That is impossible, Vex said. No one can notice that many details at once. Your species does not have the sensory capability. Marrow smiled slightly. We notice different things. Humans evolved in a world where we were not the strongest or fastest. We could not outrun predators. We could not outfight them, so we learned to watch them. We learned to read the world around us. Way grass moved when something was hiding in it, the way birds flew when danger was coming, the way other humans acted when they were lying. She paused. We have been watching for a very long Time, it is clear as throat what we do. The amphitheater was silent again, but this silence was different. It was the silence of 200 brilliant minds, realizing that they had underestimated something fundamental. Examiner Sella studied Marrow for a long moment, then he asked the question that everyone was thinking. What else did you notice? During this exam, Marrow hesitated. She knew what would happen if she answered honestly, but she also knew that lying would betray everything she believed about truth and observation. During the exam, or right now, Kath said slowly, what do you notice right now? Marrow looked at the panel of examiners on the stage. For Primarchs, 2 Cathari senior analysts, 1 Curie diplomat, 1 Vorax security chief, and 1 human representative who had remained silent throughout the proceedings. Your second examiner from the left, she said quietly, the Cathari with the silver insignia. He has been sending signals with his fingers for the past 10 minutes. Standard hegemony code. He is reporting to someone outside this room. Security teams moved instantly. Your human representative has not blinked in 3 minutes. The average human blinks 15 to 20 times per minute. He is either dead, which seems unlikely given his posture, or he is not human at all. More security teams moved. Both individuals were restrained before they could react. The Cathari examiner was indeed a hegemony agent. He had been placed on the panel 5 years ago. The human representative was a synthetic being, an artificial creation wearing human skin. It had been operating undetected for over a year. Chaos erupted on the stage. Examiners back to 3 days after the exam. Marrow Singh was summoned to appear before the Council of Grand Masters. This was the highest governing body of the Galactic Academy, and they had never before requested the presence of a first-year cadet. The council chamber was a circular room at the top of the Academy's central tower. 12 chairs surrounded a central platform where Marrow stood alone. Each chair held a Grandmaster from a different member species of the Conquered. They had traveled from across the galaxy to see this human woman with their own eyes. Grandmaster Varith of the Primarch spoke first. His voice was thin and ancient, like wind through dry leaves. We have reviewed your exam responses. We have confirmed your identifications. 5 enemy agents are now in custody because of your observations. The question we must ask is simple. How? Marrow stood with her hands folded in front of her. She had dressed in simple academy robes. She wore no jewelry or decoration. She looked like exactly what she had been 3 years ago, a school teacher from a small town. I watched, she said. I noticed things that did not fit. That is not sufficient explanation, said Grandmaster Keith of the Cathari. His forearms were crossed over his chest in a gesture of skepticism. We have spent 300 years developing observation techniques. We have telepaths and empaths and species that can see in 14 different spectrums. You have none of these advantages, yet you see what we cannot. I have different advantages, Marrow said quietly. Not better, just different. Explain. Marrow thought about how to express something that felt as natural to her as breathing. Humans are social animals. For hundreds of thousands of years, we lived in small groups where survival depended on understanding each other. Not just hearing words, but seeing the truth behind them. A leader who could not tell when his followers were plotting against him did not remain leader for long. A mother who could not tell when her child was sick did not raise healthy children. She paused. Organizing her thoughts, we evolved. Under pressure, the pressure of living with each other, lying and deception were survival tools, but so was detecting lies and deception. For 100,000 generations, humans have been playing this game with each other, getting better at hiding, getting better at seeing. Grandmaster Salura of the Salori leaned forward, her silver skin shimmered in the chamber's soft light. I am telepathic, I can read emotions directly, yet I did not detect these agents. With respect, Grandmaster, that may be your weakness. Silence fell over the chamber. No one had ever suggested that telepathy was a weakness before. Please explain, Sora said, her voice carefully neutral. You can read emotions, so you trust what you read. If someone is projecting calm, you believe they are calm, but emotions can be trained, controlled, false. Humans cannot read emotions directly, so we had to learn to read everything else. The way someone holds their shoulders, the rhythm of their breathing, the direction of their gaze, the small muscles around their eyes that move before the larger muscles of the face. Marrow gestured with her hands as she spoke. We call it body language. It is the language that humans speak underneath our words. We are usually not conscious of reading it, but we are always reading it. When a human says they have a bad feeling about someone, they are not being mystical. They have noticed 100 small things that do not add up. They just cannot explain what those things are. Grandmaster Vorth of the Vorthax spoke. For the first time, his voice was deep and rumbling like stones grinding. Together, we Vorthax have fought humans. In training exercises, your soldiers are not impressive. They are small and weak. They tire quickly, they break easily. How can a species so fragile be so observant? Because we are fragile, Mao said. Humans are not apex predators. On our home world, we were prey as often as we were hunters. We survived by being careful, by watching for danger, by noticing the tiger in the grass before it noticed us. She smiled slightly. We are very good at noticing tigers. Grandmaster Keith uncrossed his arms. His skepticism was fading, replaced by something that looked almost like concern. You speak of humans in general, but most humans do not demonstrate these abilities. Our psychological profiles of your species do not indicate exceptional observation skills. Most humans are not looking, Marrow said simply. We have these abilities, but we do not always use them. Modern human society has become safe. We no longer need to watch for tigers, so we stop watching. We forget how. But you remember, I was a teacher. For 12 years, I watched children. Children are terrible at hiding things. They think they are clever, but their faces and bodies betray them constantly. Who is struggling with their work? Who is being bullied? Who is hungry because they did not eat breakfast? Who is scared to go home? Her voice softened. Good teacher sees everything because children need someone to see them. Really see them. I learned to watch because the children needed me to watch. The chamber was very quiet. Grandmaster Vareth spoke again. We have reviewed your application to this academy. Your entrance essay described your technique as watching for who is trying hardest not to be watched. Can you elaborate? Everyone performs. Marrow said. We all wear masks. We all try to control how others see us, but the effort of controlling is itself visible. A person who is truly Relaxed does not think about appearing. Relaxed, a person who is truly innocent, does not worry about appearing innocent. It is the trying that gives people away. She looked around the circle of Grandmasters. The Cathari agent in row 15 was trying very hard to seem ordinary, too hard. His breathing was too perfect. His reactions were too controlled. Everything about him was exactly what it should have been. But real people are not perfect. Real people fidget and twitch and make small mistakes. His perfection was his flaw. The synthetic being pretending to be human had studied human behavior in great detail. He knew that humans blink. So he blinked. He knew that humans shift their weight, so he shifted his weight. But he was performing humanity rather than living it. There were gaps, small moments when the performance slipped. I saw those gaps. Grandmaster Sora raised a silver hand. We would like to test your abilities, with your permission. Marrow nodded. Of course. An aide entered the chamber, leading for individuals. They were all Cathari, dressed in identical robes. They stood in a row before Marrow, their faces carefully blank. One of these individuals is a trained intelligence operative, Sora said. The other three are academy staff members with no special training. Can you identify the operative? Marrow studied the Furkithari. They stood perfectly still. Their expressions revealed nothing to most observers. They would have appeared identical, but Marrow was not most observers. She watched them for 2 minutes without speaking. Grandmasters grew restless. Some whispered to each other, but Marrow ignored them. She was watching. Finally, she pointed to the second Cathari from the left. That one. How can you be certain? Grandmaster Keith demanded. What did you observe? The other three are uncomfortable being watched. They are trying to stay still, but their discomfort is genuine. Small shifts in weight, subtle tension in their neck muscles. One of them is fighting an urge to blink. These are normal reactions to stress. She pointed again to the second Cathari. This one is comfortable, too comfortable. Being watched does not bother him. He has been watched many times before. His stillness is practice, not forced, and his eyes are wrong. How? When you look at something, your pupils adjust to focus. It is automatic, but this one's pupils are adjusting slightly before his gaze moves. He is choosing where to look in advance, planning his eye movements. Normal people do not plan their eye movements. The Grandmasters looked at each other. The second Cathari stepped forward and bowed. She is correct. I am Commander Wrath Val of Concord Intelligence. I have been trained to resist identification for 20 years. He looked at Marrow with something that might have been respect. I do not know how you saw through me, but you did. The Cathari were let out. The Grand Masters conferred quietly among themselves. Mara waited on the central platform, calm and patient. Finally, Grandmaster Verith addressed her again. Cadet Singh, the implications of your abilities are significant. You have exposed critical vulnerabilities in our security. The hegemony has apparently been infiltrating our institutions for years without detection. If one human can identify these infiltrators, what might trained human intelligence teams accomplish? Marrow said nothing. The question was not really meant for her. We must ask, Verith continued, what humanity's intentions are. Your species has been a member of the Conquered for only 40 years. You have been considered a minor civilization technologically. and militarily inferior to the founding species. But if humans possess abilities that our finest minds cannot match, this changes our understanding of your species considerably. With respect, Grandmaster, humanity's abilities have not changed, only your awareness of them. The chamber fell silent again. I am a school teacher, Marrow said quietly. I came to this academy to learn, not to threaten anyone. I have no military rank. I represent no government. I am just a person who watches carefully. If that frightens the conquered, then I am sorry. Word of what happened at the Galactic Academy spread faster than light itself. Within a week, every major news service in the Concord was carrying the story. The human woman who caught 5 spies, the school teacher who saw what telepaths could not see, the quiet observer from row 3. The reactions varied across the galaxy. On Kathra Prime, the military council convened an emergency session. General Yethel stood before the assembled commanders with a face as grim as death. We have a problem. The hegemony has been infiltrating conquered institutions for years. We knew this. What we did not know was that a single human could expose their entire operation in a matter of hours. One human, a commander, said dismissively. An exceptional individual, surely not representative of the species. Are you willing to bet our security on that assumption? Yaflo replied. The humans have been members of the Conquered for 40 years. We have considered them insignificant, technologically primitive, militarily weak, a minor species barely worth noticing. He pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's location in the galaxy. What if we were wrong? What if the humans have been watching us all along, observing, learning, understanding our weaknesses while we ignored theirs? That is paranoid. Another commander said. The humans have shown no signs of aggression. Hegemony infiltrators showed no signs of aggression either until they were ready to strike. Yole's voice was hard. I am not suggesting the humans are enemies. I am suggesting that we know far less about them than we thought, and that ignorance could be dangerous. The council voted to request human observers for their military academy. The request was politely declined. Earth did not have enough trained personnel to spare. On Salura, the telepathic home world, the response was more philosophical. The Elder Council gathered in their meditation chambers to discuss the implications. We have always believed that emotional reading was the highest form of understanding. Elder Yenith said she was the same Yenith who had failed to detect the agents at the academy exam. She had been elevated to elder status partly because of what she had learned from that failure. The human showed us that we were wrong, not about the value of telepathy, but about its limitations. We read emotions, but emotions can be false. We trusted what we felt. The human trusted nothing. She observed everything and believed nothing until the evidence was complete. Are you suggesting we abandon our gifts? Another elder asked, double quotes. No, I am suggesting we learn from the humans. They have something we lack, not a power, but a discipline, a way of seeing that does not depend on any single sense. Perhaps we can combine our telepathic abilities with their observational methods. The Salori began a formal study of human psychology and behavior. They invited human researchers to their world. They shared their telepathic techniques in exchange for training in human observation methods. It was the beginning of something new on Earth. The reaction was more mixed. The United Nations received a flood of requests from conquered species, military exchanges, scientific partnerships, cultural delegations after 40 years of being largely ignored by the galactic community. Humanity was suddenly the center of attention. That not everyone was happy about this. We should be careful, said Ambassador Chen at an Emergency Security Council meeting. This attention is not entirely friendly. Some species are afraid of us. Now afraid of what we might see, then let them be afraid, General Morrison replied. For 40 years we have been treated as a minor species. Now they respect us. Fear is not respect. Fear leads to preemptive action. If the galaxy decides that humans are too dangerous to observe them, they might decide to remove the threat. You think they would attack Earth? I think they would consider it the hegemony. Certainly will. We just exposed their entire intelligence network. They will want revenge. The Security Council debated for hours. In the end, they decided on a policy of careful engagement. They would accept some partnerships, but not all. They would share some knowledge, but not all. They would remain friendly, but they would also remain cautious, and they would watch. On the hegemony home world far from conquered space, the response was neither philosophical nor political. It was operational. Spy Master Cravel sat in his darkened office, reviewing the reports from his destroyed network. 5 agents captured, years of work destroyed, billions of credits wasted, all because of one human woman. His aide entered with another report. Sir, we have completed our analysis of the Singh incident, and the human appears to have genuine observational abilities beyond what we have previously documented. Our psychological profiles of humanity did not account for this capability. How did we miss it? The humans themselves seem largely unaware of it. They call it intuition or gut feeling. They do not recognize it as a trainable skill. The Singh woman appears to be unusual in that she is consciously developed and refined what most humans do unconsciously. Cravel considered this. Can we replicate it? Train our own agents to observe like humans? We have attempted this with other species. Results have been poor. Human observation appears to be deeply connected to their evolutionary history and social structure. It is not simply a technique, it is a way of processing information that is built into their nervous system. Then we cannot copy it. Not easily, sir, perhaps with extensive genetic modification, but that would take decades. Cravel stood and walked to his window. Outside, the red sun of the hegemony home world was setting over a landscape of industrial towers and military bases. If we cannot copy their abilities, we must neutralize them. The Singh woman is the key. She has shown what humans can do. If she continues to operate, she will inspire others, train others. Within a generation, the conquered could have hundreds of human observers embedded throughout their institutions. What do you suggest, sir? Nothing direct. An assassination would only prove their concerns about us, but there are other ways. We will watch her, study her, find her weaknesses, and when the time is right, we will remove her from the equation. Yes, sir. The aide left. Cravel remained at the window, thinking he had underestimated humans. Once he would not do so again. Back at the academy, Maro Singh continued her studies as if nothing had changed. She attended classes, she wrote papers, she practiced combat techniques that her human body was poorly suited for. She was neither the fastest nor the strongest in any physical competition, but in observation exercises she was unmatched. The academy had begun incorporating her methods into their curriculum. They called it the Sing protocol. Students were taught to distrust single indicators, to look for patterns of behavior rather than individual tells, to consider what someone was trying to hide rather than what they were showing. Some students took to it naturally, others struggled, but all of them learned something valuable. The Concord also began a quiet program that few knew about. Human observers were being placed in sensitive positions throughout the galaxy, not as spies or agents, but as watchers, people whose job was simply to notice things that others missed. A human diplomat on HFY Prime noticed that a minor trade official was always tired on certain days. She investigated and discovered that he was meeting secretly with hegemony contacts during the night. He was arrested. A human security consultant on a space station noticed that maintenance workers in a particular section always seemed nervous. She recommended an investigation and discovered a smuggling operation worth millions of credits. A human teacher at a salary school noticed that one of her students was afraid to go home. She reported her concerns and discovered a situation of severe domestic abuse. The child was rescued. Small things, individual observations, but they added up. Marrow heard about these incidents through academy channels. Each report made her feel something she could not quite name, pride perhaps, or hope. She had started something, other humans were continuing it. The ability to see that had always been part of humanity was finally being recognized and used. 6 months after the exam, she received an unusual visitor. The man was old, with white hair and weathered skin. He wore simple clothes and carried no identification. He asked to speak with her privately. They met in a quiet garden on the academy grounds. My name is not important, the man said. I represent certain interests on Earth who have been watching your progress with great interest. What interests? Government interests, intelligence interests, the kind of people who prefer not to be named. Marrow nodded slowly. She had expected this eventually. We have a proposal for you, the man continued. When you graduate, we would like you to return to Earth. We are building something new, a program to develop human observation abilities systematically, to train others to do what you do naturally. We believe you could lead this program and do what with these trained observers. Help the Conquered, help humanity find threats before they become disasters, see what others cannot see. Marrow was silent for a long moment. I have conditions, she said finally. Name them first. I will not train people to spy on innocent citizens. Observation is for finding threats, not for surveillance. Agreed. Second, I will not participate in assassination or elimination programs. If I identify a threat, others can decide what to do about it, but I will not be part of killing. Agreed. Third, I want the right to refuse assignments that violate my principles. If I am asked to observe someone I believe is innocent, I will say noon. Year after the exam that changed everything, Marrow Singh graduated at the top of her class. Ceremony was attended by representatives from all 12 conquered species. The Grand Masters themselves presented her certificate for the first time in the Academy's history. A human stood at the pinnacle of galactic intelligence. Training, she accepted the honor with quiet grace and returned to Earth the following week. The program they built for her was called the Observation Initiative. It operated from a small facility in the mountains of Nepal, far from the noise and distraction of major cities. The location was Maro and LT Unk and GT Choice. She had grown up in northern India and understood the value of stillness and patience. Those who would learn to observe needed to first learn to be quiet. The first class of students arrived 6 months later, 23 humans from different countries and backgrounds. Teachers, nurses, social workers, counselors, people who had spent their lives watching others and caring about what they saw. Maro stood before them on the first day. You are not here to become spies, she said. You are not here to become weapons. You are here to learn what you already know how to do. You have been watching people all your lives. Now you will learn to do it consciously, deliberately, with purpose. What purpose? A young woman from Brazil asked. To help to protect, to see threats before they cause harm. The galaxy is full of dangers that hide in plain sight. Our job is to find them. The training was unlike anything the galactic community had seen before. There were no telepathic enhancers, no technological sensors, no genetic modifications, just observation, watching, understanding. Students learned to read body language in 12 different species. They learned the cultural contexts that shape behavior. They learned to notice the small things that others dismissed as unimportant. Change in breathing, a shift in posture, a pattern of eye movement that revealed hidden thoughts. Most importantly, they learned patience. Observation cannot be rushed. Maro taught them a threat that knows it is being watched will hide. You must become invisible, unremarkable, the kind of person that others look past without seeing. That is your greatest weapon, not your eyes, your ordinariness. Graduates of the program were placed throughout the Concord. They worked as diplomats, trade representatives, cultural lions, and teachers. They reported to no central agency and followed no master plan. They simply watched, and when they saw something that seemed wrong, they reported it. The results were remarkable. In the first year, human observers identified and prevented 2 assassination plots, 3 terrorist attacks, and 1 attempted coup. They uncovered 17 hegemony agents who had been operating undetected for years. They found evidence of corruption in 4 planetary governments and discovered a smuggling network that had been moving weapons across the Concord for decades. Each success brought more attention, more requests for human observers, more recognition that the small, fragile species had something valuable to offer. And with the attention came danger. The hegemony had not forgotten Maro. Clear's throat sing. Spy master Cravel had spent a year studying her. He knew her daily routines. He knew her strengths and weaknesses. He knew that she was preparing something larger than a simple training program. The humans were building a network of watchers that could eventually see everything in the Concord. He could not allow that to happen. The plan was elegant and indirect. No assassination, nothing that could be traced back to the hegemony. Instead, he would use the Concord's own fears against them. That he began spreading rumors, whispers that the Human observers were not just watching for threats that they were gathering intelligence on conquered species, themselves that Earth was building in, information network that would give them power over everyone, some species. Listened, the Vorax who had always been suspicious of clever species began questioning the human presence in their institutions, the Cathari military council, despite their request for human exchange students, grew concerned about what those students might be reporting. The whispers grew louder. Marrow noticed the change almost immediately. Her contacts in the conquered became more cautious, her students reported increased scrutiny and occasional hostility. The tide was turning. She requested an emergency meeting with the conquered council. The chamber was the same one where the grandmasters had questioned her a year before, but the faces looking down at her were different. Now less curious, more suspicious. "We have concerns," Speaker Verith said. His ancient voice was cold. "The human observation program has expanded rapidly. You now have personnel embedded in every conquered institution. Some wonder if this is still about finding threats or if it has become something else." "What else would it be?" Marrow asked calmly. "Surveillance, intelligence gathering, the accumulation of leverage that could be used against us. Has any human observer ever acted against conquered interests?" "Not yet, but the capability exists. You have shown us what humans can see. Now we must ask what you intend to do with that sight." Marrow stood quietly for a moment, considering her response. Then she did something unexpected that she smiled. "May I tell you a story?" The council members looked at each other uncertainly. This was not how such meetings usually proceeded. "Please, when I was a teacher, I had a student named Priya. She was 8 years old, quiet, shy. She never caused trouble. Most teachers barely noticed her." Marrow and LT Unk and GT's voice was soft, but it carried through the chamber. "I noticed that Priya always wore long sleeves, even in summer. I noticed that she flinched when adults raised their voices. I noticed that her eyes were often tired and her attention sometimes drifted. Small things that meant nothing by themselves, but together they told a story about what was happening to her at home. I reported my concerns. The authorities investigated. Priya was removed from a dangerous situation. She grew up safe because someone took the time to watch." Marrow looked around the circle of alien faces. "That is what human observation is. For not power, not leverage, not control, just watching, caring, protecting those who cannot protect themselves. The threats we have found in your institutions were not threats to humanity, they were threats to you too. Your people, to your children. We found them because we were looking, because we cared enough to see." Speaker Verith shifted in his seat. "A pretty story, but stories can be manipulated. How can we be certain that your intentions are as you describe? You cannot be certain. That is the nature of trust. But I can offer you proof of a different kind." She pulled out a data pad and handed it to an aide. "This is a list of everything the Observation Initiative has discovered in the past year. Every threat, every agent, every vulnerability, along with complete documentation of how we found them and what we did with the information." The council members began reviewing the data. "You will notice," Marrow continued, "that we have shared everything we have learned with the conquered. We have kept no secrets. We have built no leverage. Every piece of intelligence we have gathered has been Used to protect, not to control. You will also notice something else. The rumors about human spying originated from hegemony sources. They have been trying to turn you against us because they fear what we can see. Their agents are still in your institutions. They know we will find them. This campaign of distrust is their defense. The chamber fell silent as the council reviewed the evidence. Finally, Speaker Verith spoke. Again, his voice had lost some of its coldness. The evidence is compelling, but it does not address the fundamental concern. Human observation abilities are real. The potential for misuse is real. How can we be certain that future humans will be as principled as you? Marrow nodded. She had expected this question. You cannot be certain, just as I cannot be certain that your species will not misuse your telepathy or your strength or your technology. Every capability can be abused. The question is not whether abuse is possible, but whether the benefits outweigh the risks. She took a step forward. Humans have been part of the conquered for 40 years. In that time, we have caused no wars, started no conflicts, threatened no one. We have been good neighbors, quiet, unremarkable, perhaps too unremarkable for you to notice. Now you know what we can do. The question is what you want us to do with it. We can withdraw our observers, go back to being the minor species you barely noticed. Let the hegemony continue their infiltration. Let the threats we have found continue to grow, or you can trust us, not blindly, not completely, but enough to let us help, to let us watch, to let us protect the conquered that we have chosen to be part of. The council deliberated for 3 hours. Mara waited outside, sitting in a quiet corner and watching people pass by. She noticed everything. The worried aide who had received bad news, the diplomat who was hiding his true mood behind a practiced smile, the maintenance worker who was exactly what he appeared to be. She would always notice it was who she was when they called her back, and Speaker Verith delivered the verdict. The observation initiative will continue. Human observers will remain in their positions, but there will be oversight, regular reviews, accountability structures. If any evidence of misuse emerges, the program will be terminated immediately. I accept those conditions.